2020 was quite a year, wasn't it? Well, reflections on the year as a whole can wait for the end. For the sake of audience retention, let's just get straight to some lists. Movies. Unfortunately, I can't do that. There's a couple things to clarify first. This is my list of my favorite things I first saw in 2020, which is especially notable for movies, as unfortunately I haven't seen anything that came out this year that I especially liked. Most things I was looking forward to I didn't get around to seeing or flat out didn't release this year. So this will be a strange list. Let's start out with Parasite. Speaking of things not from this year, at least Parasite was in theaters this year. I saw it just before the Oscars, but that was still in 2020. And it's pretty great. I don't have a huge amount to say about it. It cleaned house at the Oscars. That should tell you that it's pretty good. This is by no means my favorite movie on this list, but it is by far the most detailed and deliberate filmmaking, and I do appreciate good filmmaking. Actually, what I found most interesting about this film was its international adaptation. Bong Joon-ho made this movie for international audiences, not just Koreans. And this included details like small edits to food packaging to make the English lettering on the labels more prominent, and not quite accurate translations in the subtitles to make references more recognized. But this was intended from the start, not a hack job by a foreign company localizing it after buying the broadcast license. It's leagues different from the localization jobs that 4Kids did to Pokemon and other anime.
Pika pika!
These donuts are great! Jelly-filled are my favorite!
So did I see anything else in theaters in the glorious first 2.5 months of this year? Yes. Something great that I immediately knew would be on my best of list. But it did not come out in 2020 either. It came out in 1986. Labyrinth. One reason that I do best things I saw this year is that there were many great things made before I was born. When am I supposed to praise those? So, Labyrinth. This is a Jim Henson movie with a bunch of puppets and also David Bowie. There's a couple other actual humans in it, but they aren't David Bowie, and I wasn't watching the movie for them. Frankly, this is a movie I'd been meaning to watch for a long time, but I got a chance to see this in a theater, and I do like seeing things in theaters. Anyway, I really liked this movie, even though I think it's very hard to talk about it without just focusing on what makes it silly or bizarre. Because the movie's not about David Bowie. He just plays a flamboyant villain. It's a female-led fantasy story that's mostly about the period of adolescence where you no longer want to be a child but also don't want to be an adult. But I guess part of the reason I like it is David Bowie because in addition to acting, he also did the soundtrack for the movie, which is amazing. And of course, all the puppetry work from Jim Henson and company is really good as well. It's hard to describe why I like this movie so much. It's just a whole package that's weird and interesting, but overall also very entertaining. And I really liked it. The Lion King. No, I was not a few months late seeing the new Lion King. Frankly, I have no desire to ever watch that movie. This entry is for the original Lion King from 1994, which I had never seen but saw for the first time in a theater last year. I had seen The Lion King 1.5 and The Lion King 2, but never the original. Don't ask. So, then theaters closed, which is a shame because half of all the movies I saw in the theater this year are on this list. Who Killed Captain Alex? Now here's one that absolutely wasn't in theaters, although newer films from this studio have been making the rounds to film festivals to high acclaim. What studio made this masterpiece, you ask?
Ramon Film Productions presents the best of the best movies.
This movie is the best. It's absolutely the most fun I had watching anything in 2020. You cannot beat pure enthusiasm for filmmaking, especially if your dream film is long, incoherent gunfights, kung fu, and screaming. Oh, and you never do find out who killed Captain Alex, by the way. You can watch this movie for free on YouTube, and I heavily recommend it. Finally, to round out this top 5 that was not ranked or even intentionally 5 entries, a first for this list, a documentary. I was originally going to put this film in my Weird Internet Things section of the review, but I think it deserves a spot here. The Last Bronycon, a Fandom Autopsy. Do you want to know why we're bronies? This is the hour-long YouTube video for you. Jenny Nicholson has the unique perspective of someone from the My Little Pony fandom who was a fan before bronies even existed and was an active part of the brony fandom as well, leading to this very interesting story of why a cartoon for little girls created massive conventions for adult men. I've rewatched 2 of the other movies on this list this year, but I have re-listened to this documentary at least 5 times. Miss Nicholson has a very good storytelling voice, and this is a fascinating true story of a bizarre fandom. What didn't I end up seeing this year? Well, I didn't see Tenet yet. I also didn't see Pixar's Soul, and if that's as good as people say it was, it'll probably be on my list next year. And I still didn't get around to seeing Cats. Not that it belongs anywhere near a best-of list, but I still do want to see it. More importantly, I didn't have a chance to see anything on a whim that I might have ended up loving. I love going to the theater, so this year kinda sucked. But what can you do when you're stuck at home? Watch a lot of TV. Next section. Serials. Why is this called serials, not TV shows? I haven't watched something live that isn't sports in years. Watching shows with commercial breaks is awful. And episodic shows often don't even air on TV these days. They just go straight to streaming services, like Star Trek Picard. Sorry, that show was only just okay. That wasn't an entry on my list. The Good Place, Season 4. The 4th and final season of this series was just as good as the previous 3. While the ending was maybe a bit rushed, it's still my favorite American TV show of the last decade. But as this is the final season of something I like, it would spoil a lot to say most of what I liked about it. It's kinda hard to review something past the first season of it. For another example of something hard to review, I didn't include Made in Abyss: Dawn of the Deep Soul on my movies list, because it's a continuation of an anime series, not a standalone. But do I put it here in my favorite shows list because it continues a show? It was a movie. I don't know. As it is, I don't think I like the movie enough to put it on my best of list anyway, yet here I am mentioning it. How about another actual entry on this list? Avatar: The Last Airbender. What do you mean a show debuting on Netflix isn't the same as it airing for the first time? Netflix certainly pretends otherwise for most things it holds streaming licenses to. I guess that doesn't actually matter, as I watched Avatar on CBS All Access anyway. And every piece of praise I've heard for Avatar is merited. 10 out of 10, one of the best written series I've ever seen. The writing for mature, complex subjects is better in this kids show than in most series aimed at adults. The animation is good too, good fights, good facial expressions, but really the show rides off character writing and its ability to handle serious subjects. Watch Avatar. Ishizoku Reviewers. Completely on the opposite side of the spectrum from Avatar is a dumb comedy anime that I had a lot of fun watching, and pretty much the only series that I think I enjoyed more watching it week to week because of the community enthusiasm behind it. I love the premise and the execution of this show. That being said, you either already know what this show is or have no clue. Hello, non-anime fans watching this video. Hopefully this means I've made some good non-anime content worth watching to draw you in. Ishizoku Reviewers translates to Interspecies Reviewers. It's a review show, but the main characters are a group of men going to monster brothels. It's a sex comedy bordering on straight-up porn. This is absolutely something that you either love or hate, but it's nice to have a sex-focused show that's not about cheating or just really rapey. I really enjoyed this show, but it feels wrong to give this way more review time than an actual masterpiece like Avatar, so let's move on. Haibane Rinmai, The Girl Who Fell to Old Home. I always end up watching very interesting anime at the end of the year. This year, it's Haibane Rinmai. This puts me in a weird spot where I may not really like this show much when I look back on it in a few months, but it's on my list for right now. At some point in the near future, I'm going to make a full analysis video about this. So yeah, this anime makes this list for being interesting to analyze. Because frankly, a lot of the animation in it sucks. I don't know the production history of this show, but it just looks like there were some issues behind the scenes. Yeah, it's nearly 20 years old at this point, so age is a factor, but that's not really an excuse when there was some great animation from the early 2000s. Yes, it's a lot of negative things to say about something on my best of list, but at least it sets a good mood. That's all for shows. I've heard The Boys Season 2 is great, and I liked Season 1 a lot, but I haven't watched it yet. On the anime side, though, there was barely anything I was even interested in that aired this year. Even without anywhere to go out to, I still have a hard time following stuff as it airs. Short films. Hedgehog in the Fog. There's a lot of cool animations on YouTube. This is not one of them. This is the amazing Russian film by Yuri Norstein from 1975, and it's easily one of the best shorts I've ever seen. The visuals and tone of this short are so distinct that there's really nothing else like it. I heavily recommend watching this film. Unfortunately, for a lot of shorts, I don't have a huge amount to say because they are, well, short films. For here, it is the unique, striking atmosphere that is the draw. Thermostat 6 by Goeblins. Goeblins is a French school of art and animation. There have been dozens of great short animations produced under their name. This particular short I like for its use of absurdism to make a point, taking full advantage of its medium to exaggerate a situation. It's also about the older generation not really being concerned with doing anything to fix the world. And you can have a lot of stories about that, but this one has particularly good presentation, while still also having a surface-level humorous storyline. Happiness. This short film by Steve Cutts is about a rat looking for happiness. I'm sure any similarities to human life are purely coincidental, and it has no message about the rat race of modern culture. Also, this shot in it is really cool. Party Pooper. The only problem with this film is that it's so short that I can play the entirety of it here behind me talking about it. But go watch the original without me talking over it. This was made for a 15-second horror film challenge, and I like it a lot. Duck Playing the Drums. I don't think I need to explain this one much. This is just a brilliant video. Special section, Satoshi Kon. This year, I watched everything by the anime director Satoshi Kon. He was an extremely interesting director, yet for various reasons none of his films made my best of list this year. However, I also do plan to make at least a short video about my opinion on all his work. I just wanted to acknowledge him here. While I do not love any of his particular works as a whole, as much as I like other things on this list, I love his visual style and editing. It is a huge loss that he died young, as his work stands in stark contrast to most anime, and I wish there were more of it. If I had to pick a best film by him, it would be Perfect Blue. But it's also a hard movie to recommend because it's a psychological horror film, and you either like those or you don't. Music. I will try to be brief here, as this section always seems to run for much longer than the others. You see, I spend a lot of time working, and when I'm working I can listen to music but not watch anything. So I have probably 10 times more musical exposure during the year than movies or games or anything else. That being said, the only band regularly releasing music that I follow is Gorillaz. Pretty much everything else in this list did not come out this year. So, Gorillaz, Song Machine. This is Gorillaz' most recent album from the last year. As I already said, I like Gorillaz. The standout tracks to me from Song Machine were Désolé, Opium, With Love to an X, and The Pink Phantom. The Pink Phantom might be my favorite song of the year. I don't really like Elton John. I don't even know what any of Black's songs are, but I sure do like this song featuring Black and Elton John. Bjork. I like weird creative music, so I'm not sure why I didn't listen to more Bjork before this. Here's what I think are her best songs. Army of Me. Known to some as the pop song that uses a Locrian scale, this song stands out from Bjork's discography for its particularly memorable dark and ominous tone. Bachelorette. While Army of Me is threatening, Bachelorette is just creepy. I'm a fountain of blood in the shape of a girl. Now there's an interesting first line to a song. Hyper ballad. Now instead of creepy, let's just stand on the edge of a cliff and sing about unhappiness and contemplate suicide. If you haven't caught on to a theme yet, a lot of Bjork songs are not exactly upbeat. That being said, Venus as a Boy is a pretty nice upbeat song as far as Bjork goes. I also really like Joga, Body Memory, and Violently Happy. Death Grips. Do I actually like Death Grips? I really have no idea. They are unique and intimidating. I don't know if music being intimidating is a good thing, but I can at least say that compared to when I first heard them, I am more used to their music now at least. I probably wouldn't have put Death Grips on this list, except that they also did a collaboration album with Bjork. Now that's some advanced strangeness. Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush. I don't actually like most of Kate Bush's music. She has a beautiful, powerful voice that Running Up That Hill demonstrates, but the majority of her songs are way too high-pitched. I am not a huge fan of super high female vocals. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of really high-pitched male vocals either. This song, though, Running Up That Hill is great. The Who. Mongolian metal, anyone? Well, sort of metal? That's the best description for The Who's style. And they've certainly collaborated with other metal artists with prominent featurings, getting American radio play. I'm always a fan of more musical variety on pop radio. Hailung. If The Who producing modern music with some traditional Mongolian instruments isn't strange enough for you, how about Proto-European musical modes? Hailung's music includes hide drums, bones, guttural yells, rattles, and ancient Indian instruments. Step back to the Bronze Age with Hailung. Mr. Big. Jumping back into modern rock. I like Mr. Big's music. I don't have a whole lot more to say beyond that. Shine and Take cover are their best songs. However, I'm not a big fan of To Be With You, their biggest radio hit. The Goldfinger cover of 99 Red Balloons. It doesn't sound much like the original song, but it still sounds good, and I'm a really big fan of 99 Luftballons. Poor Man's Poison. I like this band, but I don't have much else to say. Yeah, this is the end of my list where I just list off some stuff. I Don't Know How, But They Found Me. Here's another band I like. Their name is, interesting, and I specifically like Do It All the Time and Choke as great singles. Now a couple of music videos specifically. But I have no idea how to pronounce this title because it's entirely in Japanese. Anyway, this is the best music video I saw in the last year, and it's almost from 2020, it's from December 2019. This is a great example of how an interesting filter can turn average-looking 3D models into something visually striking. And the song is okay too. Konya wa Hurricane from Bubblegum Crisis. How do you open your 80s anime OVA? Contrasting a glitzy rock show with a violent confrontation between police and some sort of cyborg mutant. The whole soundtrack for this OVA series is great, but the opening scene is a standout. Music honorable mentions. David Bowie. Bowie is not new to me by any means, but I still haven't got through his whole discography. Notably, I heard the Labyrinth soundtrack for the first time this year, but I already talked about that film and movies. The World Ends With You soundtrack. I guess this is a spoiler for the games section I'm about to get to, but the soundtrack is the best part of this already good game. You've got Someday, 3 Minutes Clapping, Give Me All Your Love, Calling, 10 different versions of Twister, The One Star, Transformation. The soundtrack is just stacked. So, I guess with that, it's on to games. While I listen to a lot more music, I feel the most biased about my video games list every year, because I generally only play things I expect to like a lot, either from past experience or from critical reviews. I do try to play odd indie games more, though, as those are usually the most interesting, if not the best, games each year. I should also stress that this list can include board games, card games, or even sports that I played for the first time in a year, but this year it doesn't, it's just video games. So let's start with the couple things actually from this year on this list. Genshin Impact. I actually agonize the most over whether this game deserves a spot on this list. I always try to ignore time played as a judge of the game's quality, and I have played a lot of this game. But all my reasons to not include it were really not very strong. This game is good. The game I'm actually not including on this list after spending over 100 hours on it is Xenoblade 2. That game has myriad core issues. And it's a worthy comparison to Genshin Impact, the game I'm actually talking about, because they both have gacha draw mechanics. And despite being a freemium gacha that actually wants to take a lot of your money, Genshin Impact still has a better random pull system than Xenoblade 2. Core crystals are stupid. Okay, but this isn't about why Xenoblade 2 is only okay. Why is Genshin good? Well, it's a freemium game that has an actual game to play and enjoy, instead of just an endless string of Skinner boxes. And more importantly, the game that it has is actually good, comparable to recent AAA console releases. It's not comparable graphics-wise by any means, but I don't care about that. Normally, a completely original universe doesn't explode out of nowhere with floods of fan art, but that's the power of actual world building and good character designs. While there is more to Genshin than just a lot of waifus, damn, it has a lot of waifus. And that really helped get people to actually play the game and say that the game part was good too. And of course, even with all that fan art, Best Girl Shin Yen has basically the least fan art out of anyone. Among Us. Unlike most things on these lists that I'm a few years late in getting to, Among Us has been out for 2 years but only started blowing up in the summer of 2020, so I wasn't late to this party. I've had a lot of fun both playing and watching other people play Among Us. And while it feels weird that my first 2 games on this list are huge fads, popular amongst the masses, after spending the intro praising weird indie games, I mean, Among Us is a weird indie game. It's just an indie game that ended up becoming one of the biggest games around. And while it's not a super refined artistic masterpiece, it doesn't mean I have not had a lot of fun with it. A Short Hike. Here's another indie. The best games don't need big maps or long campaigns, or waifus. A Short Hike takes less than 2 hours to complete, but it makes an impression. This is a very chill game. I'm only 1 year late to this game. It was on a lot of people's best of 2019 lists. Air, Memories of Old. This game is also quite short like A Short Hike. This game is also quite good like A Short Hike. This game's protagonist is a girl who is also a bird, just like A Short Hike. These games also have basically nothing in common beyond that, so that's a bad comparison. But I already made a video reviewing Air. It's a good game. The World Ends With You. This would just be an okay JRPG story-wise, but it has the insane double X factor of unique mechanics and killer soundtrack. A lot of people seem to be excited that the announced sequel will probably not have awkward touchscreen controls, but having to tap and swipe to attack is part of what made this game unique, and helps accentuate its fiercely individual characters. The soundtrack, however, is what puts this game over the top by being something very special. I played the final remix version, which is the Switch port of the game. While overall the game is still fine, in condensing to a single screen instead of the dual screens of the original DS game, the boss fights in The World Ends With You became significantly worse in all subsequent ports of it. But it's still a good game. Planet Coaster. I like roller coasters. Yet I did not go to any amusement parks this summer. Instead, I planned trips for next year and built coasters in Planet Coaster. As a coaster building tool and just for screwing around, Planet Coaster is great. It's made by the same devs that made Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. However, while it's a lot better visually than RCT 3, the campaign ends up feeling pretty repetitive pretty quickly. There are very few scenarios that are challenging without just being crushingly difficult, and most ended up just being far too easy. But I wasn't playing it for the campaign, I just wanted to create cool coasters, so this is the perfect game for that. Rather than being stuck on a grid like you are in Roller Coaster Tycoon, you have pretty free-form controls over all aspects of the ride. But it's not super overcomplicated to the point of being more design software than game, like No Limits 2 is. Honorable mentions. Baten Kaitos. While Xenoblade 2 does not make this list, another Monolith Soft game, Baten Kaitos, does. Although I may be holding Monolith Soft games to too high standards just because the first Xenoblade was so good. I already made a review for Baten Kaitos 2, but since I'm once again mentioning it along with Xenoblade 2, I'll just say that these games actually have some significant similarities. But Baten Kaitos' really unique combat system is interesting enough to at least get this game an honorable mention. Super Robo Blast 2 Kart. This is a fan-made Sonic kart racing game. It has an extremely high bullshit level, even higher than old Mario Kart games. But sometimes that's what makes a chaotic party game fun to play. Hyperlight Drifter. This game is good. I don't have much else to say about it beyond that. Other internet media. This is a section for just other things I found online that don't really fit into other categories, but are pretty interesting, like weird video essays and stuff. Duck playing the drums. Yeah, I know I already had this on the list, but it was worth playing again. To Solve the Labyrinth, an essay film about a fantasy film, by J.D. Hansel. This is the best kind of video essay. Produced years ago and with only a few thousand views. And more importantly, well made and about something that I already like. If you also like Labyrinth, the movie I included earlier on this list, and also like video essays, give this a watch. There's a lot of breakdowns of this movie out there, but this is my favorite. Superpermutations, or the Haruhi problem. How 4chan solved a theoretical math problem. Sometimes 4chan is just a wonderful place. Not often, but sometimes. I won't try to explain everything about the story here, because there's other people who have told the story in a much more interesting way. But now there's a serious mathematical paper out there with co-author credit to a 4chan Anon. Because some other Anon really wanted to find out how many ways you could watch the first season of Haruhi out of order. Remember the anime Haruhi from my best of list last year? I already talked about all the weird stuff about it too much then, or rather I will in the future because that best of 2019 list is still not actually published as of making this video, but Haruhi truly is a rabbit hole with no bottom. Starry Sky Ripper. This year I wanted to go to more theme parks. That did not happen for obvious reasons. However, I did watch a lot of point-of-view roller coaster videos, and the most interesting of these was Starry Sky Ripper in China. Why is this interesting? First off, it's an inverted coaster that doesn't go straight into a dive turn immediately after the lift hill. Nearly every inverted coaster does this. But mainly I find it so interesting for being a flying coaster that actually utilizes how riders lying down instead of sitting can actually comfortably remain upside down, lying on your back for periods of time. This allows this ride to have such elements as a barrel roll during a turn, an inverted pretzel loop, and a 540-degree zero-G roll, which starts with you hanging upside down but ends with you lying on your back. Because of all of this, this is by far the most interesting roller coaster layout that I saw this year. Art. Here's a section I don't have all the time. Art. Unless I'm talking about painting or sculpture, this could really be combined with any other sections. However, I want to set aside things that I appreciate for their artistic worth, rather than directly enjoy in any way. Everywhere at the End of Time by The Caretaker. This album got a lot of online coverage in the last year, which is how I discovered it. I'll let other people describe it in more depth than me, but in short, this is a 6.5-hour long sound collage that simulates dementia. This album was extremely unnerving to listen to, and even without the explicit context of the stages of dementia, it's a slow descent into some sort of insanity. Did I enjoy hearing this? Absolutely not. But it's extremely effective art. So that's it for my best things list. But how about the worst things? I don't have a huge list of awful things, but I do want to give some quick shoutouts to particularly bad things from 2020. A global pandemic. No worst of list for 2020 is complete without this, but you probably wanted to hear about bad media. Worst movies. Mr. Baseball. Wow, what a bad movie. I did a video on this one already, but what really drives home how awful it is that I also watched Mr. 3000 this year, which has a remarkably similar premise of a washed-up baseball player, and many plot beats falling in nearly the same way. Mr. 3000 isn't even good, but it's just not completely incompetent, and the difference between the two movies is night and day. The Room. I'm sorry, but this movie is not so bad it's good. It's just bad. A few key scenes are brilliantly terrible,
Hi, doggy.
You're my favorite customer.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye-bye.
but if you cut them all together, you'd have less than 15 minutes of a good, so bad it's good film. The rest is just dreadful. Yes, it's absurd and self-important, but that does not make it at all fun to watch. It just drags on forever. Radar Secret Service. This movie is dreadfully boring. I watched the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version of it, and it was still boring. Magical Girl. I walked away from this Spanish drama wondering what the point was. The opening few minutes are very strong and direct to set up the movie, but the rest of the movie seemed to care more about a critique of Spanish society rather than fleshing out its characters or making any twist that its plot has interesting at all, rather than just coming off as, well, that's the next thing that happened. This movie is not nearly as bad as the other three on this list, but I was just really disappointed by it. Worst Show. Rail Romanesque. Hey, here's another anime that was actually from this year. This adaptation of a visual novel is about cute girls talking about marketing opportunities to allegedly promote train travel, I guess. If this show even had trains in it at all, it wouldn't be on this list. But if you're gonna make a dreadfully boring, barely animated show, allegedly about a bunch of girls related to trains, and then not even talk about or show trains, when that's the whole premise of the visual novel, not only is your show awful, it's also a terrible adaptation. These were only short 6-minute episodes, yet this was still one of the worst anime I've ever seen. And it's not even, like, offensively bad, it's just, why does it even exist? And somehow I get more worked up talking about this than the actually really, really bad movies I saw. Worst Game. Sonic Forces. I was a few years late to this one, as I am with most games, but boy, Sonic Forces is complete garbage. Even compared to the other bad Sonic games like Sonic and the Secret Rings, it's just so much less fun. Like, Secret Rings is bad, but the level design of Sonic Forces is just beyond insulting. The writing is completely incompetent, and the story just falls flat on its face, pretending to be grand, but then is completely inconsequential as characters laugh off super serious things a minute after they're introduced. This game absolutely deserved all the negative reviews, and it's nice to see that Sonic Team are still on track, making absolutely terrible games. So that's my best of list for the year 2020. I hope you enjoy hearing the things that I liked from the past year, because it's a year that sure had a lot of negatives, so it sometimes helps to focus on the positives. Thank you for watching, and if you want to hear about any media I'll be consuming in the next year, or want to catch my best of 2019 list when I finally get around to making the video for that, which I just have other things I want to work on first, slam that subscribe button, mash that bell, do all that standard YouTube stuff that I'm really bad at finding creative ways to shill. The production value of this video was honestly not that great, as it's really hard to create interesting visuals to talk about, for instance, music that doesn't really have visuals. So hopefully my future videos will be better than this one. Thank you for watching. Bye.